Nothing is ever safe in the world of The Walking Dead. Welcome to the Complete Story series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues, and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read them dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. At the end of our last chapter, Maggie had released their captive Lydia back to Alpha and her group of Whisperers in exchange for their return of the missing patrolman. Carl tried to tell everyone that they shouldn't, but Maggie agreed to the exchange regardless. Not taking the decision lightly though, Carl decided to set off and find Lydia. Out along the coast, Ezekiel and a group of men kill some of the wandering walkers when Ezekiel hears a voice calling out to hold their fire. As he turns back, Ezekiel sees Rick and asks if he's wasting ammunition on walkers now, and Rick tells him no. They've been stockpiling it since they've been making far more than they can use. The two of them head over to the coast awaiting the fishing boat that was supposed to be due the other day, but as they wait, Ezekiel asks if his price for ammunition is going down since he has so much. And Rick tells him that if he wants to shop around for bullets, be his guest, because he can always check elsewhere for lumber. Ezekiel tells him to calm down, and Rick says sorry, it's just that they have a good system now and he doesn't want to screw it up. Back over at Hilltop, word begins to travel that Carl has been missing. Maggie's concern isn't that he wouldn't survive out there, but that with this situation with the Whisperers, they may think that they sent him to spy on them, and that could be some serious trouble. Elsewhere in the forest, Carl begins to wake up from his rest as he notices a walker walking up to him. He pulls out his gun and the walker begins to ask if he's been following them. He says he left on his own and he wanted to make sure that Lydia was okay. And the walker, who's actually a Whisperer, tells him to put the gun away. If he pulls the trigger, he may not kill her, but the people around him will kill him, so he should just come with them. Back over at the pier, the fishing boat finally arrives with Michonne on it, and after it docks, she comments that they could have sent someone else to help them. As she walks away, Rick stops her and asks if she missed him, and after giving him a stern look, she smiles and tells him, maybe just a little. The two begin to catch up on life out in the sea, but Rick begins to ask if she found what she was looking for, and Michonne then goes quiet. She says that she's sorry for what she did, and Rick tells her she just disappeared. They spent so much time looking for her. People could have died. Michonne says putting people at risk was the last thing that she wanted. She just couldn't do it anymore. She abandoned her children, her husband, they are gone. And her with Ezekiel, she was happy. But with her girls dead, she didn't deserve to be happy. And Rick tells her to stop punishing herself for things that weren't her problem, just go home. Over in Hilltop, Gregory is locked up telling Harlan that he was framed. Harlan asks, so Maggie planted the evidence in your trailer and poisoned herself? And he tells him that it's the only thing that makes sense, and Harlan looks at him and says, really, it doesn't. Maggie listens in while Gregory tries to lie, telling him that he's pathetic. He poisoned her and celebrated so that he could take control of this place. And he asks if she's going to kill him, and Maggie remains silent. A short while later, Maggie and Jesus sit down discussing what they should do with Maggie, stating that they really can't kill him. And Jesus thinks things are different. Keeping him around would be a danger to her. As the two of them go on, Dante calls in telling them that they still haven't found Carl, and his tracks went out past the mapped areas. And they really don't want to have what happened last time happen again. Jesus comments that Rick isn't really going to like this, and Maggie says Rick is the least of her problems. Carl is on his own. Later on, Maggie sits with Claudette, one of the mothers of the children that Carl beat, asking her to tell her about Gregory. She says that she's sorry that she knew, and Jesus says that she's sorry that she didn't do anything to stop it. Is he understanding that right? And Claudette says that she was angry. Her son was hurt, so she wouldn't have been upset if she had died. And after looking at Maggie's look, she says that she's always had a temper. Maggie leans in and asks, how about your husband and the Harlan family? They have tempers too? Once Claudette leaves, Jesus sits down asking if she's made a decision about Gregory, and she tells him that she has. Gregory has to die. Meanwhile, over in Alexandria, Negan finishes taking his supervised bath while Andrea tells him to hurry up and get back in his cage. But as he gets dressed, he tells her that he has all the time in the world. Once he gets back in his cell, Olivia attempts to lock the door, but as they leave, Negan sits down and notices the door was left unlocked. Rick returns back to Alexandria from the coastline trip, and along the way he's stopped by Dwight, asking if they can talk for a moment. Dwight says that he thinks that he might not be cut out to be leader. He took charge and made sure that no one tried to take up Negan's cause, but he wants out. He suggests that Rick pick out another leader, and Rick tells him that he can't. They just need to have an election. A short while later, Rick goes to check on Negan, asking if he's being treated humanely while he was gone, and when he looks up, his eyes widen as Negan sits with his open cell door, stating, "Welcome back." Rick pulls out a gun telling him not to move, and Negan tells him, "This is about building trust. I could have gone out and acted suspicious, checking around booby traps, burning your house down and having my way with Andrea, but I didn't. I didn't do those things because I want to build some trust. Maybe not trust me, but at least recognize the things that I could have done. Rick tells him that that will never happen and he locks the cell back up. And Negan tells him, "Don't kid yourself thinking that you've locked me up to be some kind of symbol of mercy. I am the only one that can fix things." After leaving, Rick pulls Olivia to the side and tells her to look at all of the people around her. Because of her, they're all dead. And you know how? Because she left Negan's cell door open. He then asks if he even needs to tell her what would happen if that happens again, and she begins to cry, telling him no. As they leave, Andrea begins to ask what was that about, and Rick says, "Not here." Once they go home and get ready for bed, Rick explains what happened with Negan, and she thinks that he may have been a bit harsh with Olivia. Rick feels that maybe he wasn't hard enough, and then Andrea says he could have just killed Negan and there'd be no problems. But he explains that if he was going to lead, he needs people to respect him. It's not really better, but it's just a capable solution. Killing Negan would have been the expected thing. That's what everyone wanted, but instead he's showing that they are better than their emotions. They are civilized people, because killing someone would just make things fall apart. Meanwhile, over in Hilltop, the town watches as Gregory is hung. Maggie stands before her people, some in agreement with her and some not, and tells them that she expects this to be the last time that something like this will happen again. Over in Alexandria, Andrea gets up, leaving Rick to sleep while she goes to look out over everyone putting together their booths for the fair. She speaks with Siddiq about how everything is going so well. Tomorrow's going to be crazy. However, back in the forest, Alpha has led Carl to their encampment, and he and Lydia watch as a whisperer carves off a walker's skin. The man comments, stating that she can have this if she'd like. It's about her size, and calls her kid. And Carl asks Lydia why no one would ever use her name, and she says that they embrace their animalistic behavior. Animals don't use names, so why should they? Carl tells her that they need to get her out of here, but their conversation is interrupted when Alpha walks up to Carl, telling him they need to talk. Alpha begins taking off her mask, stating that he's smart. How is it that they survived so long? And Carl says it's because of his dad. They used names and they acted like humans. Alpha explains that she showed him their ways in hopes that he would deliver a message back to his people to leave them alone. But Carl tells her he won't so long as Lydia is in danger. And Alpha says that she will just have to learn more about his people. The next day, as the fair begins to kick off in Alexandria, Maggie and the rest of Hilltop stop by to tell Rick about their encounter with the Whisperers. And during that encounter, Carl had left to find one of the captives that the Whisperers had. Dante left for 2 days looking throughout the mapped zone, even after warning them to stay away. Rick shouts at them that that's all he's got was 2 days. Why didn't they tell him sooner? And Maggie explains that she has a lot on her plate. And Jesus adds that Gregory tried to have her killed. Rick readies up with Andrea to go looking, but as they leave, Michonne asks where they're going to be going. After stating that Carl's missing, she tells him to go ahead and lead the way. And shortly after, Rick, Andrea, Michonne, and Dante all head out. However, at the fair, Earl Sutton shows his blacksmithing wares to a person that he hasn't recognized before. Which community does she live in? And she tells him this one, but not for very long. And that woman is Alpha. Outside of the towns, Dante leads the group to where they first ran into the Whisperers, and Rick mentions how much longer. And Dante says about another 6 miles from where he had stopped looking. Rick says that he just has to hold out hope that Carl is fine. And Andrea tells him not to worry. Remember the fact that their son is a badass. Then a walker in front of them says, "Your son is quite a handful." Rick pulls out his gun, telling him to take him to his son or he's dead. And the Whisperer tells him that he speaks without concern. Who might be listening? And then more Whisperers begin to surround them. The first Whisperer tells him that he will take him and only him to see his son. The rest will stay, as the rest of the Whisperers keep watch. Back at the Whisperers' camp, Carl demands to know where Alpha went because she's been missing all day. But since he's not getting any answers, he begins to hear other Whisperers mention that he caught this one on the road. Carl turns back to see his dad, and the two of them sit and talk. Rick asks if they've heard him, and Carl tells him no, they're weird and they haven't done anything to him. Rick then leans in, stating that when they get a chance, they're gonna make a break for it. But Carl tells him that he's not leaving without Lydia, so Rick can just go on ahead without him. Rick reaches out, telling him that he won't leave him, and Carl slaps his hand away, stating, "Just have a good look at me. I see how uncomfortable it is for you to look at me." And Rick tries to calm him down, but Carl begins shouting, "I don't care who hears me, but that girl Lydia, she sees me for who I am. She doesn't care about the way I look. So I won't leave her. I finally found someone who can accept me for who I am, and not because I'm the son of Rick Grimes." The Whisperers begin to gather around them, and then Alpha walks through, stating, so he's the Rick Grimes that she's heard so much about. She's not impressed. Rick looks at Alpha and at what she's holding and asks, what did she do? And she holds out the bloody machete, stating that she encountered some trouble on the road. It was unavoidable. Rick shouts, "What did you do?" And then a Whisperer punches him, and he says, he will remember this. Alpha tells him that he's in no position to threaten them, but right now they're going to walk, just the two of them. And after a bit of walking alone, Alpha leads Rick to a building at gunpoint, telling him to walk all the way up the stairs. She tells him to go ahead and look over the ledge, and when he looks down, his eyes widen, and he sees a massive herd of walkers. She tells him that she wants him to know that when she threatens him, she can bring the whole world down around him and destroy everything that he loves. She then leads him back down, and Rick asks her what she wants, and she tells him, from him, you have nothing that you can offer us. I've seen your world, walked your streets, and it's all a joke. You've built a shrine to a long dead world. We, however, are animals. We don't have to pretend to be, but we are free. Rick says that she's full of it. These people that she leads, are they free? And she tells him that they are. They are animals, and animals need a leader, hence why she is the alpha. And she will fill that role until someone else takes it from her. Back at the camp, Carl says that he isn't going to leave Lydia, but Lydia tells him that he needs to run when the chance comes. Now with his father coming here after him and threatening Alpha, this is all about to get bad, really bad. But from the woods, Rick and Alpha return, and Rick says that they are going. They have a chance to leave in peace, and he will carry Carl's ass if he needs to. Carl tells him that he won't leave without Lydia. Sometimes the men do things to her. Rick looks at Alpha asking if it's true, and she just looks at them stating, rape. Why pretend that word has so much power and does so much damage? It's just a part of nature. Lydia begins to cry, stating how she is hurt, and Carl's people protect each other from these things, something her own mother refuses to do. And Alpha says that they are this way because they are strong, and soon too, she begins to cry. As Lydia tries to comfort her, Alpha smacks her away, and then Rick splits the two of them apart. Alpha grabs Rick and tells him that she can't offer the life that Lydia needs, but he can. She then points to Lydia, telling her that she is weak. She belongs with them. Now be gone. I've marked the border, and you will take Lydia and never cross it again, or our horde will cross into yours. The Whisperers then lead the three of them out of the camp back to where Rick first came in, and then Rick notices that Andrea, Michonne, and Dante are missing. As the three grab the horses that are there, Carl then asks, what is it that he's not saying? Why is he so upset? And he tells him that it's what she said about the marking, the bloody machetes. He just can't help but worry about it. And then he sees something. He sees the border that Alpha has left. It is a series of poles with heads on them. The heads of people at the fair, including Ezekiel. Lydia tries to say that she's sorry, she had no idea, but rage begins to fill Rick and he asks why. It doesn't make sense, why? And then a voice calls out to him. Andrea asking him, what do they do next? The war between the Whisperers is about to arrive, and we've been waiting to do more Walking Dead, waiting for the show to come back. Guess what, guys? It's Halloween, and the show's back. So we're back to doing Walking Dead, and for those of you guys who are wondering, yes, I called the character Jesus Jose in the last video, because the name Jesus is spelled the same thing as Jose, and I hadn't seen the latest episodes, so I didn't know that he was officially called Jesus and the joke behind his beard. Now I know it, so from this point forward, he is being called Jesus, so that way you guys can stop yelling at me in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Comicstorian and Instagram at Comicstorian, and I'll see you next time right here.